Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there, feeling well, staying safe, staying cool, very hot. As we know, the air quality is still out of whack out there from these Canadian wildfires. Not quite as bad this morning, and definitely positioned in a different geographical location this morning than yesterday, but we're still dealing with the unhealthy air quality from this wildfire smoke that we're dealing with. We'll talk a little bit on that, but really the big topic in this video will be severe weather, and we'll try to break down who could see the worst of it today. Yesterday, unfolded about the way most thought it would. We mentioned yesterday morning's video that an intense line of storms could work its way out of Iowa, northern Missouri, into Illinois, have a chance to really get intense, and that's exactly what happened, and that's why the Storm Prediction Center ended up upgrading the enhanced risk to a moderate risk around late morning yesterday, and rightfully so. Let me know what you guys are seeing in Illinois, or how you guys got impacted in Illinois, Indiana from that line of storms late yesterday morning and afternoon. There was some tornadoes embedded in that, and I think we will have some confirmed tornadoes as the survey team goes out there probably this morning throughout the day, or they might have been out there yesterday evening. But there was good news from this. The good news is it made the air quality a little bit better for you guys, as just rain and wind kind of cleared out the atmosphere here temporarily. And then it gave you guys some much needed rain, but you had to deal with the damage from this crazy line of storms that swept through. 60, 80, 90 mile per hour winds was pretty intense. So we'll see who could get it today. Hopefully it's not as bad as yesterday. As of now, it doesn't look like it is. It doesn't look like the environment supports a high-end scenario like yesterday, but we have to watch tomorrow. Tomorrow could be a big day. But with that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You ever consider joining the channel? Join tab here, and there's a join tab below the video. Videos, I have 31, 32 incredible members that support me every month in that way. But as always, just thank y'all for everybody who makes these videos part of the routine. Everybody's appreciated here. We're a family type atmosphere here, and I appreciate the amazing month of June as we round off June, head into July, a little bit closer to those fall months you guys know I love. But don't want to rush off summer too quick for you summer lovers. I'm not much of a fan of summer, especially as we get into July and August. I tend to be over it by then, even though technically it just started. But anyways, let me get off that. You guys got anything that I can pray about, pray over? You guys know the deal. Please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So let's get rolling this morning. We always look at water vapor loop. I'm not going to mess with the clicker this morning. We still have the ridge in place in the south central U.S. is extending this way across the Mississippi Valley. It's weakened somewhat flattened. Therefore, the jet stream kind of dips a little bit further south, and therefore the storm path may be a little bit further south today. But in general, you got two clusters of storms I'm really watching this morning. One is entering Iowa, areas of northern Missouri right now, and then there's another one right here in the central Alps region, right here in the eastern hills of Kentucky, starting to enter Tennessee, western areas, extreme western areas of Virginia. We'll see how this holds together as it tries to flirt with the North Georgia area, the Western Carolinas. And in fact, let's go on and look at it right now. Hopefully I won't get no glitching with this. I think we're good. So line of storms working its way now through and kind of moving pretty quick. So by the time some of you folks watch this will be a different story. It'll be in a different geographical location. But southern Iowa dealing with some storms this morning. These are not severe warned as of right now. We have to watch to see how the atmosphere recovers. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center discussion mentions they do not think a more high-end environment is going to unfold compared to yesterday in this area today. It does not look like the environment is going to be supportive for that level of intensity of a line of storms like we dealt with yesterday. But we still got to watch this region, because this entire region does have a threat for severe weather, which we'll show you here in a second. But definitely some southern towns and communities here in Iowa and even northern Missouri dealing with some storms, and you just got scattered downpours still lingering here in Nebraska, even here in western areas of Kansas and southeast Colorado. We head on down southeast, and we're dealing with some storms this morning. These are just strong, nothing severe as of right now, as of around 6:45 a.m. But you're getting some rains in West Virginia. Any rains this time of the year is much needed unless you've already seen a ton of rain. But western areas of Virginia, areas of West Virginia, you guys are getting some rain this morning. And then we're watching this cluster of storms that will probably impact just about all of eastern areas of Tennessee. Watch out Knoxville, maybe even down to Chattanooga. We'll see if some more development, it kind of develops westward, if you will. But the big story is, in the very short term for today, how much does this hold together as it gets over the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina? Does it make it all the way to Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, Columbia, Charlotte? It's a big question. If it does, I think this will affect our high temperatures for today. This happens sometimes in this ring of fire setup. You'll have high temperatures potentially getting pretty hot, and then around the storms will move through mid to late morning, and it will pretty much disrupt the forecasted high temperature. So we'll watch to see how much this holds together as it goes over the mountains over the next 1 to 2 hours. Storm Prediction Center outlook. It's a pretty huge area of a slight risk. Pretty broad area. It just tells us that probably their confidence, everybody's confidence, is around medium right now on what could unfold. But we'll watch another line of storms that does develop sometime late this afternoon, this evening, and the kind of the central high plains here in eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and Nebraska. We'll watch this later on, and then we will watch what's going on right now that's entering kind of Iowa and Missouri. Does this get stronger? And eventually we know it'll dip southeast, but does it really get some steam to it as it heads and rounds that ridge and moves southeast out the northwest into Kentucky, eventually into Tennessee? We have to see how this behaves later on the day. If it really gets intense, they'll increase this to an enhanced risk sometime later today, but as of now, just a slight risk. We'll have a tornado risk right here, just a 2% risk in both of these areas, here in the plains, the high plains, and then right here in areas of the Midwest and the upper Mississippi Valley. This does include Springfield, Illinois, St. Louis, Evansville, down to Bowling Green, Paducah, all these regions right in here. Please watch out. You got a 2% risk of a tornado. And, we just had the 5% risk yesterday. And we did get a couple tornadoes embedded in that line of storms. The wind threat, I could see us getting a hatched risk of wind sometime later in some later updates. But right now, just basically in the entire slight risk, you got a 15% risk in the yellow of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour and mile per hour readings. Hail, right now, you do have a hatched risk of hail for some supercells that could develop in eastern Colorado a little bit later today. So not only do you have the 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in these two yellow areas, you also have in this black outline region, which almost goes all the way up to Denver, but includes some towns and cities along the Front Range, points eastward to see 2 inch in diameter or larger hail, which is a 10% risk. So rain today, you have a slight risk of excessive rainfall being met, which is a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met, the criteria being met in this region. A lot of rains already fell in this portion of the country. We'll get another round of storms that moves through this area later on today. Could drop another inch or two of rain. It's quite possible, but we'll watch this area right here in the middle of the country for some flash flooding. Watches, warnings, and advisories. The heat is beginning to flex across the southwest. It's beginning to get really hot in the valley of California, even heat advisories up in the southern areas of Oregon. Well, it's likely going to get well into the 100s here in the valley of California. In the desert southwest, it's starting to get really hot. You haven't seen super hot temperatures so far this summer, but it's going to get very hot today. Very hot with the humidity that you don't have out here in the deep south, up the Mississippi Valley, and areas of the mid-south. Excessive heat warnings are in the purple here. Heat advisories in the orange. Temperatures will probably get over 100 degrees in Memphis, Nashville, Little Rock, pretty much almost all Mississippi, areas of Alabama. It'll get very hot today. The heat indices will be well over 110 degrees as we get into the afternoon hours. Air quality, in the red, we still got unhealthy air quality readings along a lot of areas in the mid-Atlantic and interior areas of the Northeast, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, down here to Washington, D.C. Even got unhealthy for sensitive groups in New York City. And it's pretty unhealthy down here. There's little areas in and around Atlanta and Birmingham where the air quality is very unhealthy. But if you notice, there's this weird little gap right here across areas of the Ohio Valley and Mississippi Valley, Midwest regions. And that is because these rounds of storms have went through this area, cleared out the atmosphere. But, you're dealing with the nasty storms, so it's kind of like, you take what you can get. But, in this case, you're getting nasty weather. In exchange of clear air, if you will. But, it's still pretty bad up here in the upper Great Lake in the Great Lakes region, Chicago, especially Milwaukee, Detroit. So you're still dealing with it out here. It's very smoky. It's also smoky in areas of North Dakota. So just be aware of this. You guys know all about this already. The pictures I continue to see on social media. I mean, I was out and about with my family yesterday, late afternoon, evening. And even here in Columbia, South Carolina, it seemed more hazy and smoky yesterday than it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I felt like it was more talked about, so it's pretty wild. So we're going to jump right to this right here. Everybody else in the Southeast that, is not shown in this, it's not really expecting any rain today, just hot temperatures. We'll talk about the southern and central Alps region here. You're dealing with those showers and storms. We look at the radar out in Knoxville right now, and I mean, these are chugging along. They're not really weakening. Knoxville, you'll probably get a line of storms here in the next hour. These are moving quick. So by the time some of you folks watch this, I mean, this could be all the way to the Gatlinburg region, already kind of heading into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. But this is producing a lot of lightning heading right towards Knoxville and surrounding regions as I speak. And, the HRRR model and the NAM are both kind of about the same with this. They're showing shower and storm activity, but not the same structural look as what it actually looks like on radar. But we don't expect this to look perfect. The HRRR model has this weakening as it gets over the mountains, and it doesn't really re-energize. We could be dealing with some lingering strong storms or two in the Cumberland Plateau or the valley of Tennessee here. But, we'll see what happens. We get into this afternoon. It's around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Not a whole lot's going on based off the HRRR model. But then we watch, look what enters the screen right here, which, is firmly entrenched into the slight risk. Some intense storms begin to move into western areas of Kentucky, Bowling Green, Paducah, many areas, many towns and communities. Watch out. Madisonville, many areas, Owensburg. You guys watch out for some intense storms. These begin to move into the state. It's around 8 or 9 p.m. at this point. These storms could look totally different, being a totally different geographical location, but I'd watch out Knoxville late afternoon, really in the evening into the late evening. We could have an episode here of a line of storms blasting through areas of southern Kentucky, northern Tennessee. They could make it all the way to the same areas that are being affected kind of right now, just after midnight or around the midnight time frame, starts hitting the Cumberland Plateau, affecting areas like Cookeville, places like that. These are moving along. Don't want to drop the pin on my Google Maps. Let's keep going. Chattanooga could be affected just after midnight. These slam the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, North Georgia. At the same time, you got some scattered convection popping off here in Georgia, South Carolina. It's a tough one to figure out. This one continues to move through, and this could be affecting areas of Atlanta, up to Greenville, Spartanburg, up to Hickory, up to Nashville, sometime in the wee hours of the morning, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then you got another cluster of storms making its way through into Kentucky, so you could be waking up to a cluster of storms right here again in Evansville, southern Illinois, western areas of maybe Tennessee, and definitely Kentucky. But this is kind of what it looks like potentially tomorrow morning. It's a tough one to figure out today, guys. The NAM, what does the NAM show? Shows that same cluster of storms right now. I would argue the NAM is handling it a little bit better. This continues. Both the NAM and the HRRR model has this cluster of storms weakening, but I'm telling you guys, both of these models could be totally wrong. This cluster of storms could make it all the way down to Atlanta by late morning, or the Greenville, Spartanburg area, Asheville. It's very possible. But you get into the afternoon, both models agree, as of now, that there's not going to be much going on this afternoon, this evening. And then as we get into kind of the evening time frame, some storms could start popping off. Same kind of areas, but just looks a little bit different compared to the HRRR model. Northern Tennessee, Kentucky, I would say it gets stormy a little bit earlier in the night than compared to the HRRR model. And then these storms could sink southward into Alabama, North Georgia, Chattanooga region as we get into the late evening hours just before midnight. And then we get into the overnight hours. Some storms are possible in Georgia. And then we start to wake up tomorrow morning. It could be dealing with some more storms up here in Indiana or Illinois. So it's a tough one to figure out in this region today. Could have 1 to as much as 3 clusters of storms over the next 24 hours. Temperatures are a big story today, okay? Meridian, 100 degrees. Jackson, probably 100 degrees. Memphis, Nashville, 99 to 100 degrees. Little Rock, over 100 probably. Alabama, a tick cooler, mid to upper 90s. Atlanta, hot Atlanta is gonna definitely hold true to its name. Mid to maybe upper 90s today. Very warm Louisiana, and this humidity is brutal. We look at the actual heat indices, which is the feel-like temperature. That's a weird glitch. We get into about the hottest time of the day, guys. The heat index in and around the Memphis area, just south into eastern Arkansas, guys, over 115 degrees. Around 110 in Nashville. Birmingham, well into the 100s. All of Mississippi will have a heat index, maybe at one point later this afternoon, of over 110 degrees. So the temperatures are absolutely brutal today. It feels like the dog days of summer. Unless you're near a body of water, it's just that it already feels like that time of the year where it's just too hot to go outside. Now, when I was a kid, I don't ever remember just staying inside just because it was too hot. But, it's a little bit different these days, just because there's more to do inside, like the video games and things like that. But, man, it's getting very hot. But the Northeast today, I would say, is maybe the quietest area of the country. You keep going, you get about midday, you could have some showers that, might make it up to Watertown or something in New York. And maybe some isolated downpours are possible in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Maybe an isolated pop-up shower, even storm possible in Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. Could become a little bit more widespread into the Delmarva later this evening. Into eastern areas of Virginia. Could have some a stormy evening, which is possible. But not expecting these to be really severe. If they are, they could be. But we get into to the overnight hours. Some showers begin to enter Ohio. And not a whole lot going on. We'll take it all the way to tomorrow morning. Could be waking up to some shower and storm activity in West Virginia. But not a very active 24 hours. The Northeast, pretty chill conditions. The South Central U.S., quiet all the way to about afternoon hours, which is typical. And then we get some big storms that are possible along the Front Range. These could produce a lot of hail. A lot of hail. We all know, not all of us, but if you're not familiar with how the storms are in Colorado, they produce a ton of hail. And it seems like any day there's a marginal or slight risk or higher of severe storms in Colorado, you typically always get some catastrophic looking hailstorm where it looks like it hails about 1 to 2 feet of hail. So that is possible in Colorado today, so don't let that take you by surprise. I'm sure if you live out here, it doesn't, but you never know if you're caught in one of these. But please be careful with some big hailstorms in eastern Colorado today. They're quite possible. We take it into the 4 to 5 p.m. range. You get some pop-up storms that are possible in northern Missouri. These could grow up scale into a nasty line of storms. We'll talk about that here in a second. And as you can tell, there's a pretty intense line of storms working its way. You cannot ignore the storm threat in the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas today either. But we get a little bit closer to these regions. I want to watch later today. We get into this afternoon, this evening. Intense storms move out of eastern Colorado into Kansas. And this is around 6, 7 p.m. Watch out for any small town and far western areas of even Nebraska, Kansas. A nasty line of storms could move through that produces an isolated tornado threat, damaging winds, and very large hail. So these blast through, it will dump a lot more rain. That's why you have a chance to see another inch or two of rain a little bit later this evening. This is working its way after the sun goes down. This is 11, 12. This is around 1 a.m. You got some intense storms moving through. And these could be further south, just about all the state of Kansas, but I would say it favors more so northern Kansas, southern Nebraska. And then we watch what this energy does as we're waking up tomorrow morning. Does it grow up scale into a big-time line of storms where we have that enhanced risk for tomorrow? And we'll talk about that briefly here in a second. But more rain expected. Another 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible in certain areas of northern Kansas, southern Nebraska. So expect more rain in this region. I mean, I know you guys will probably take all the rain you can get in these areas. It can get quite dry in this region of the country sometimes. So more rain expected today, but you're going to have to deal with that line of storms that sweeps throughout the evening and overnight hours in Kansas and southern Nebraska. The north central U.S., really most of the northern portion of the region you see here, like the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region, up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, pretty quiet. We get into this afternoon, and then this is when we could get some storm development in South Dakota, Nebraska, quite possible. Goes that nose itch again. As we are getting into this region down here, this is the area we want to focus in on right here. And in fact, we're going to go on and jump to it, but we'll go on and keep it going through the rest of the frame. My folks up in the UP of Michigan, not expecting much in the way of rain today. Wisconsin, not much. Could have some showers in the wee hours of the morning tomorrow morning. And you could wake up to a rainy start here in like Madison or Milwaukee, things like that. But let's go on and zoom in to this region right in here that includes areas of Iowa, all of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, surrounding states. We'll take it off this morning, and we watched this round of storms that we talked about right here. Let's see if it's still on the screen. This is that round of storms that we want to watch here. Okay, models are handling it pretty bad, I would say. We're going to switch it back to here. And this is what that line of storms is showing it's going to be like at around 11 a.m. this morning. So it shows it maintaining somewhat. So if you're in, and it's this line of storms is already ahead of time. In fact, I would say that it's about 1 to 2, 3 hours. I would say 2 to 3 hours ahead of time compared to what actually is going on. So it's hard for me to even talk about this model guidance because it's already off. The timing is off. The strength is off. But we're going to have to roll through what we got, and we keep this going. Just note that, if you're in Cedar Rapids, Davenport, even down to Quincy, Peoria, Rockford, this line of storms could be more intense than what it's showing, around 2 to 3 p.m. Okay, so just know this, but it does show that line of storms weakening as it tries to get close to Chicago, southern areas, of Wisconsin, but it shows additional storm development where the energy really builds here. So, storms are starting to develop here and kind of somewhere in the northern half of Missouri, maybe around the St. Joseph area, maybe just north of Kansas City. You got some storms developing in southern sections of Illinois, and this is when they can get quite intense, and this is why you had that slight risk down here. Kind of a corridor of strong to severe storms will develop into here. These could produce large hail and damaging winds. And we'll stop it here. This is around 7 p.m. The HRR model wants a cluster of storms here in northern Missouri, cluster of storms in southern Illinois, western Kentucky, maybe the Boot Hill, Missouri. So does this kind of cluster up and turn to a line of storms? It does show that happening, what we already talked about in this region here. But what happens in Illinois? This is around 10 p.m. Intense storms and basically kind of the southwest sections of Illinois. This is hitting the St. Louis area around 9 to 10 p.m. based off the HRR model. You keep this going. Does this kind of grow upscale overnight? 1, 2 a.m. You got storms moving through the southern half of Illinois, southern half of Indiana. It's going to be tough to figure out. I would say today is even more difficult to figure out. That's why you just have a massive slight risk. To me, that screams lower confidence on what could happen today. But just know, if you're in this section, let's go on and see if this will work. It does. Cool. So just know, if you're in this section right into here of all these states, I would certainly watch out for some severe storms throughout the next 24 hours. They could be intense, and there is a tornado threat too, so we cannot ignore the tornado threat at all. So we'll go into the NAM. This is what the NAM shows. The NAM does hold that cluster of storms together more, but the NAM is way off on timing. You got to note, the NAM is in the HRR model saying that it wants this line of storms right here at around, what is this? This is 11 a.m. because this is in Eastern time. Back it up to Central time. Around 11 a.m. This is where the storms are right now. Let's see if we can get this back in range here. So it's pretty much already there. And what is it? What time is it? It's around 6 a.m. Central time. So how many? I mean, that's 4 or 5 hours off. unless it's picking up on this back here. But if it is, then that's even worse, because that means that the models aren't even picking up on what's actually happening in Iowa and northern Missouri right now. So that would make it even worse, even more embarrassing for the models. But we watched a cluster of storms that could kind of straddle the Missouri-Iowa line, get into western Illinois. And then I would say the HRRR model, NAM, somewhat agree with just this kind of scattered area of convection that develops in this area, from northern Missouri through St. Louis down to southern Illinois, maybe even southern Indiana. And you got some kind of weird colliding with these outflow boundaries that they kind of collide with one another. But like I said, this could be everywhere, guys. The NAM likes the idea of waking up tomorrow morning to more of an organized cluster of storms in Illinois. But this is going to be tough to figure out. It is. I can tell you the updraft Felicity swath does indicate some rotating thunderstorms in northern Missouri, southern Illinois, almost getting into the Boot Hill, Missouri, and areas of Kentucky throughout the next 24 hours. So don't, discount the tornado threat with this, because there will be some embedded rotation just like there was yesterday. Okay. So I hope that helps. I know it doesn't help much. The timing is everywhere. That's why it's very important to have a way to get alerts, look at your radar, things like that. The Rockies, quiet day. Not a whole lot going on except some scattered showers and storms in eastern Wyoming. Areas of the Dakotas, we already talked about that. And then this, I really think it could get quite stormy in eastern Colorado later today. I think we'll have a very small window of some supercells, could produce some very large hail, and then this will quickly grow upscale. So if you're in basically anywhere in eastern Colorado, go on and prepare now for some nasty storms later this afternoon. But the rest of the western U.S., the Rockies, it's pretty quiet today. Not much to speak on at all. Hot temperatures. I don't think it'll get quite this hot into Missouri, but expect 100s all the way into Missouri. You're still just chilling like a breeze up here in the Northeast, just 70s and 80s. The Carolinas is heating up, but, not much different than yesterday. We also have to watch those storms that screech across the southern Alps, because if they make it, then that'll be a big player. And so if they make it, say if they get to Atlanta about here in the next 2 to 3 hours, then that's going to affect your high temperatures for Atlanta. So even though you're calling for high temperatures in the mid-90s in Atlanta, if that line of storms makes it in from the north, you will not get that hot today. So we'll watch. But this area of the country, the Dakotas, Minnesota, you're a little bit below average temperature-wise, only in the 80s. It's a lot more comfortable. You're on the north side of this jet, so you got a little bit more comfortable temperatures up here, only in the 70s and 80s, maybe some 90s here in the upper Midwest, but very hot down here, right immediately under this high pressure. So west, the only area that's below average is right here in the immediate Rockies, right in here. But everybody else around this cooler air is warming up substantially. Mid-90s in the lower elevations of Washington State. It's getting well into the 100s in the valleys of California, the desert Southwest. You're starting to get that heat that you guys are all notorious for, well into the 100s, and a very hot day expected. Big day tomorrow, I think. We got to watch. Confidence is already pretty high that the environment will support a high-end, multi-round of storm kind of scenario. But you got an enhanced risk of severe weather. This does include some of the same areas that's been impacted. But look how large the slight risk is. Extends all the way to Virginia, West Virginia, upstate South Carolina, North Georgia, northern Alabama. Tornado threat with this, there is a 2% risk. Okay, so I definitely think we're going to get some nasty storms in this region tomorrow. So we'll definitely pay attention to this. We'll watch for this, and we'll try to figure it out for you folks in the next 1 to 2 videos. Wind threat, there's already a 30% risk of winds exceeding 60 miles per hour in this region. So they're already sounding the horn for this to be a big threat. But the hail threat, just a large 15% risk. So we'll continue to try to figure this out. I think tomorrow could be a big deal for a lot of people. We'll watch and see what happens. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.